Hello everyone and Assalamu alaikum. This is Introduction to Psychology Part 1 by Dear Knowledge. Okay, we have successfully completed the lesson 2 of chapter 7. If you haven't watched all those videos, if you have missed any lecture, any previous lectures of previous chapters or from previous lessons, then I have given all those links in the description box. Go ahead, click on those links and watch those videos. And from this video, we'll be starting our lesson 3. Lesson 3 is all about distraction of attention, in which we'll be discussing about causes and control. But since this lesson 3 is going to be very detailed, and very detailed means very long, so that's why I have divided this lesson into different parts. So in this video, we'll be starting part 1 of the lesson 3, and part 1 is all about selective attention. So let's start with selective attention. So basically, attention is selective in nature, and this aspect of attention has long been one of the central topics of interest for the psychologist. And selective attention is in fact a process that operates somewhat like a gateway to the factors of attention to let in certain inputs to the focus of attention by a process of filtering. And this is done by selecting the permeable inputs by voluntary process of brain and blocking others out of the gate, and that remains in the fringe, or you can say margin. So this is called filtering model process, in which the brain filters out or partly blocks out some while some inputs are let in. So we can say that selective attention refers to the phenomenon of concentrating over one activity at a time. So the other activities which are blocked out are either not noticed or at best vaguely noticed. So the let-in inputs are situated into the focus that is perceived as distinct and clear in form and shape. So to understand the selective function of attentional process, imagine yourself in a party where you are engaged in chatting with a group of your friends, and out of many other kinds of voices and noises, you turn yourself to the voice of the one of your friend with whom you're in a dialogue. So in the meanwhile, you listen someone referring your name in a corner of the party hall. So your attention is diverted from your friend to the direction of the sound where your name is being mentioned. So your friend is still talking to you, but your attention is now diverted to the other side, what someone is saying about you. And apparently, you may pose that you're listening to your friend, but in fact, you're unable to register anything. Now, Cherry, in the year 1953, studied the process of selectivity in the dichotic listening, which is considered as an important experimental study. And he presented two messages to the subjects, one to each ear, with the help of earphones. Now, they were instructed to shadow, means to listen to the message and repeat out the same loudly. And one of them fed to one ear. Now, a different message was presented to each ear, and the subjects were instructed to listen to one only. And they were then questioned to find out how much of each message they had retained, and the experiment showed that a very little content was picked up from the unshadowed message, and the subject did not notice if the speaker was using the foreign language or if the speaker was reversed. No, processing of unshadowed message was found to be minimal, and they could notice the change in voice when switched from the male voice to the female. Now, one of the salient features of the selective functions of attention is that concentration on the selected activity is not interfered by the blocked out activity or activities. So, however, at the time, selective attention is felt disgusting, particularly when we feel the need to concentrate on more than one activity simultaneously. Now, selective attention has very extensively been studied to explain how does this work. And various views or models have been proposed, and important among such studies are the studies done by Diorish and Diorish in 1963, and Treisman in 1969, and Lindsay Norman in 1977. So these studies state that since it is not possible to process all the information in the sensory channel, some inputs are filtered or partially blocked out, while others are let into the focus. Now, in the process, two kinds of events are noticed. And number one is a parallel processing, and number two is serial processing. Now, these processes can be explained through an example. Now, suppose at a party, someone at a party is standing between two groups of people, and we're talking something on two different topics simultaneously. Now, in the situation, that person, he is likely to pick up some of both at the same time. Now, in this case, parallel processing is taking place. But when he finds that at a given time, either one of the two group is in the focus of attention, because it is difficult to attend to more than one set of information at a time, it is termed as serial processing. That is, attending to one set of information and then switching over another. So preferring to one and then to another is an example of serial processing. Now, in both the kinds of processing, the unattended input is filtered out and sent to the margin of range, resulting in dim, or you can say hazy awareness of unattended information, because he does not register most of the information. Now, sometimes shifting of information from fringe to focus is also seen, and this happens when some potential factors of attention, such as intensity, novelty, etc., are present in the blocked out bits of information. For example, let me share another example. For example, if someone is still between the two conversations at the same time or at the same stage, now he is likely to switch his focus from the filtered out conversation if the voice in his conversation is increased. Now, as regards the point of location in the sensory channel where blocking in filter model occurs, and view of different scientists differ. Broadbent in 1959 holds that the input blockage occurs at the sense organ or in the very early stages of the input processing. Now, this is not as bottleneck theory, and this resembles a bottle with a very tiny opening that results in a very small quantity or amount of water to enter inside the bottle. And similarly, when our sense organs have biological bottlenecks due to which it is unable to permit much of the information to get through the focus so only a few of information gets through and much of it is filtered out. Whereas according to Shiffrin in 1977, on the contrary, say that filtering takes place at the later stage of information flow. We can say that at the stage where information is interpreted as meaningful. So the cortex is the location where valuable information are selected and then situated in the focus, while others are blocked out. Still, other link filtering process to the limitation of resources to focus, and such views lay emphasis on limited mental capacity for processing the incoming information. So this limits our capacity to deal with all sensory inputs at a time, and therefore we allocate limited resources, and as such the limited capacity permits only one set of information at a time to let in. So we see that as regards the location of blockage in the sensory channel, there are various views or models, and therefore it is not possible to draw any conclusion about it. However, selectivity in attentional process is a fact that is indicative of the limited capacity of the attentional process. Let's talk about the factors of selective attention. Now, there are several factors that influence selective attention, And these are generally related to the characteristics of the stimuli and the characteristics of the individuals, and they are generally classified as external and internal factors. If we talk about the external factors, these are related to the features of the stimuli and other things held in constant. The size, intensity, and motion of the stimuli appear to be important. And the other is the internal factor, and according to this, these factors lie within the individual, and these may be divided into two broad categories: the motivational factors and the cognitive factors. Now, motivational factors relate to our biological and social needs, whereas the cognitive factors include the factors like interest, attitude, mental state, etc. Now, we'll be discussing all these factors in great detail in our upcoming next video, and this was all about today's lecture. If your concept is clear, you can like the video. If not, you can ask us in the comment section and we will be happy to help you out. Plus, if you're new to this channel, you can subscribe, click on the bell icon so you will never ever miss a notification from us. And you can share the link of this video, the link of this channel with your family members and friends, because sharing is caring. Until then, Allah Hafiz.